UML communication diagram by Keilbart and Jason Presher. UML communication. So the basic concepts of what a UML communication diagram is the same thing as a collaboration diagram from older versions of UMLs. So if you've ever worked with UML before, collaboration diagram, communication diagram, same basic concept. You have some main points that they visualize the representation of events. They're all about object relationships and message flow. So communication diagrams, if you look at one, are shown in the same way as sequence diagrams, but with the option of placing the boxes anywhere in the media that you're presenting. So there's no specific rules about where each box needs to go, just that there is some relationship drawn in so you know how the objects connect to each other. And so that's done with the association connectors. And those connectors have messages that are attached showing direction of message flow, and they have a numbering system so you know what's happening at what point. Another thing about communication diagrams is they are a behavioral modeling system, which defines varieties of interaction as a model executes itself, as opposed to structural modeling. So again, communication diagrams are all about message flow, object relationship, and behavioral modeling. And now, Jason's going to go ahead and talk to us about the demonstration of UML communications.
Oh, thank you, Chris. So our demonstration that we have of UML communication diagram is a diagram based off the Pantry Pro software program that we're developing for our class. And as Chris also mentioned, we have the number flow. And so the first part we have is our user. In the first part is actually the interaction is for the Pantry Pro. So this is a consistent diagram. So first off, we have our user, and what they want to do is they want to find recipes. So number 1 says they want to find recipes. So we follow the number flow. 1.1 goes to the search function. They're looking for a recipe, so it goes into the recipe database. And looking through all the recipes, they find the recipe, so they're interested in it. So 1.2, view the recipe function, which shows that recipe. And then we go continuing with our number flow. We go with 1.3. They view the recipe, they like the recipe, and they want to add the recipe to their database so they can use it at a later time. And then it goes into their recipe table. So this is our example of how to use a UML communication diagram. And also with UML communication diagrams, there are pluses and minuses. So some positives of UML communication diagrams are when applying UML as a sketch, they're much more space efficient because they can be put anywhere on the page, horizontally, vertically, however you want to do it. They're also easier to modify. I mean, if you've already made the diagram like we had before, let's say you put a box in the wrong location or it's the wrong type of box, you can delete that box and the line that goes to it, redraw it somewhere else, and reconnect that line. In sequence diagrams, everything has to be on the right side of the page, which quickly consumes up all the space that there may be there. So if you're a developer and using sequence diagrams, you realize how fast that space is used up. And then also with UML communication diagrams, they're better to illustrate the complex branching of the software, the iterations needed to run that particular point, and then the concurrent behavior associated with it as well. Well, Chris is going to show us some downsides of UML communication.
Thank you, Jason. So some of the downsides, one is that they're generally harder to follow at first glance. If you look at the diagram I've got in this slide, everything is just kind of everywhere. There's no specific order to it, other than the fact that there are sequential numbers attached to the messages, which are the arrows pointing at where things are going and when they're going. So there is some order to the chaos, but the first time you look at it, it takes a little bit of time to get used to it. The other downside is that there is no specific long or short-term naming system for communication diagrams. And so because of that, we use standard words and letters throughout UML so that there's consistency in every diagram. So for long-term names, we use the word interaction and then put the name of what it is we're showing. For instance, this slide says interaction online bookshop, and then you have your long-term communication diagram depicted. There's a different way of modeling this that's the short-term. I didn't add one of those to this presentation, but to put the name in that same box at the upper left-hand corner of the diagram, you would simply change the word interaction to the letters SD. And in that way, you have the naming systems. So again, hard to follow at first glance, naming systems, and you really do have to pay attention to the numbers attached to the messages between the boxes so you're able to read the entire diagram. And so now some recommendations that we have for you guys is, one, this is a great tool to use when you're short of space to display objects and message flow. Again, that's entirely because there's no rule about where the boxes have to be placed. So if you only have X amount of space, but Y amount of information, you can organize your information in any order to fit in that X amount of space. And it should work just fine no matter what kind of media presentation you're doing.
Using communication diagrams, you need more complex notation between the different boxes. This is not something you should use. You probably use the sequence diagram or a UML so you can have better notations of what is going on in between each box. So thank you for watching our presentation, and don't forget to take the quiz. Bye. All right.
This time you made sure you were the main screen?
Yeah, see that white box? You can't see it, but I got the white box around my name.
Okay. I clicked